In the first reading, Barry starts out talking about this bucket that was hanging in, I believe, the barn in his home in Kentucky. How it collected leaves and other natural um, uh, deteriorating materials and collected soil, and how nature tends to, and is the primary purpose of the forest or the woods to protect the soil. That even when things change and when the forest is cut down to replace with farmland, the purpose is still the same: protect the soil. And he compares that to culture. He tuned the soil is local culture. That the purpose of culture is to protect the local traditions and stories and interests. Excuse me. This is that essentially what he talks about is that globalization is not accomplishing that. In fact, it's failing in that regard. Instead of local cultures are being colonized by city cultures, and city cultures are being colonized by global cultures. And this is done through the media, through television, which tells people that the right thing to do is to become as homogenous as you can. A lot of times, especially in conservative Christian societies, we talk about the degeneration of the family through various means. But according to Barry, the degeneration of the family is happening because of this globalization. Well, he doesn't use the word globalization, but that's the way I see it. In the past, the next generation was raised to replace and take the role in society of their father and of their mother. I'm sorry everyone's being so loud. Hope you can hear me. Nowadays, it's not about replacing your parents as it is of one-upping them and leaving them. Once we leave, and once we're no longer getting money from them, they're no longer of value to us in our society. To be honest, in this society, I don't know where my children will end up living. They can end up living anywhere in the United States. They could end up living in Pakistan or Indonesia or Mongolia. Honestly, that's the way the world's going. They could live anywhere. I don't know where they'll be. And that's not the way the world used to be. And so, because of that, I have no local culture. I grew up in the suburbs of Atlanta. The Cherokee were kicked out of Atlanta years ago. That aspect of local culture is gone. My parents are from Utah and Wyoming. Most of my friends, they're first generation Georgians. Their parents aren't from there because people migrated to Atlanta for the jobs, and other people who are from Atlanta migrated elsewhere for other jobs. So there's no more local culture. There's this unified American culture, and Barry says that's a bad thing. In the other reading, he talks about how these things contribute to the degradation of the natural environment. So, pardon me. The Wikipedia article you read, there's a quote that talks about, I guess, from a Buddhist perspective, how Buddhism would look at the situation of consumption that's damaging our natural environment. Ultimately, it should be said that our acts of consumption are a means to an end. We're seeking better human quality of life. So it only makes sense that we would seek minimal consumption for maximum benefit to our emotional and physical and psychological well-being. But the way that the world works, as we're reducing everything to money and homogenizing the culture, it facilitates a society that consumes everything in a foolish sort of way with no foresight. All in all of these readings to me seem like hopefully, as an optimist, a harbinger of um, maybe post-globalization, or maybe a localization movement within society. Perhaps um, technologies such as the 3D printer um, or other things will mean that eventually it won't be any cheaper to have products manufactured in China as it is to have them manufactured locally. The arbitrage is no longer going to be worth pursuing because it's all going to be flat eventually as the world flattens further more so than it is now. And so people will again have value in locally produced goods, and it will be economically feasible to do so. At which point, hopefully, in an optimistic view that I take, local culture will reemerge. The cultural soil will be protected once again, and we can have a bit of a renaissance. We can have a cultural and environmental renaissance um, through post-globalization or through localization. That's my thoughts about the reading. Sort of talking about a different aspect of the dangers of globalization on a local, to a local audience, and what it would take to change that. But although I feel like the author is not particularly optimistic.